this place is odd. This is not a typical museum, it's not a typical gallery, it's not a typical home or a typical teaching space, but it works as all of those when it shouldn't. It's Sir John Soane's home, which he had his entire collection in for the sake of teaching his students and working, and then in order to preserve all of it, he just gave it away to the nation for free forever. I did not know it existed until I applied, and then before the interview I'd gotten a tour and that made me fall in love with the place. My name is Riya Patel. I'm a visitor assistant at Sir John Soane's museum. Been here for about 2.5 years. I grew up in North Finchley and I had quite a few dreams as a kid. One of them was working in a museum, library or the circus. And when I came here, I just had to work here. This museum is 3 houses put together, filled to the brim with everything Sir John Soane loved and worked towards. Sir John Soane was an architect who started off from quite humble beginnings, but then he managed to get quite successful thanks to luck and hard work. I'd say the most famous Soane building would be either the Bank of England or Royal Chelsea Hospital. This job amazes me a lot because people can come in and not realise that this place is linked to something they'd already knew about or loved a lot. The fact that this place is linked to the invention of the phone booth was very odd. Rooms where history was made, but no one would ever know. Yes, it does make me feel good working here, because this place is amazing in the sense of a carpet, a piece of paint on a wall, or a nail should not be something that are interesting, but they are here because they'll be one of a kind, or we don't make it like this anymore, or this being here means it was 5 different decisions made by a bunch of people across 100 years. And it's just too much meaning packed into something which just makes it even more special. People have the biggest reaction and are always lining up for the picture room. When you first walk in, every single area is surrounded by paintings and it's top lit so you can see everything. But then most of the walls are capable of swinging outward in order to show even more paintings. So on the outside it's 30 paintings, on the inside it's over 100. It's a bit of a show that gets put on, lasts about 10 minutes, and everyone's always filming it and oohing and ahhing. There's a lot of Soane designs that weren't built. There's Turners, Hogarths, Canalettos. The students' drawing room now has an artist in residence in there, so this place is still a workplace for artists. It looks down on the entire museum and it plays with another piece of the museum in a very poetic way. It's staring at a statue of Apollo, who was the god of protecting youth. I like the area around the Apollo Belvedere statue because he is the sun god with this permanent golden halo around him from a skylight. He's the god of the future, looking at the future of English art history and English wonders in the picture room. The sarcophagus of Seti I is something that is very show-stopping and impressive. It was found raided, and then it was going to go to a different collection. Newspapers were wondering whether or not it would go to the Emperor of Russia, but instead it's in Holborn. One of my favourite parts of the museum has to be the Monks Parlour yard and cell. His wife was dead, his son was dead, his wife's dog had just died, and he is the lonely old monk living alone in this massive home. But then in that entire room, which should be sad, he is entirely bragging. Look at me, I built this, I built that, I have this very rich man's stuff. It should be a sad room, but it's not. It's just very whimsical and funny. A slightly morbid but sweet thing is grave of Fanny the dog, because this was a little Manchester Bull Terrier that Eliza Soane loved, and the grave of the dog that outlived her is just so much grander than a grave for a human, let alone a dog. My typical day would involve coming into the rooms that I'm going to be working in that day, making sure everything's all right, and then when a visitor arrives, welcome them, answer any questions they might have, make them feel safe to answer the questions, because they can come to me with any questions they might find us silly, because sometimes I'll have to look it up in front of them in our books, and then we'll end up discovering the thing together. And that's always a good experience, learning new things in process and teaching them at the same time. And then once they've got a little bit of interest, build on that until you've made their day, really. Making people's day can never not be satisfying. You end up forming a little bit of a human connection with someone in that short time period. As a visitor assistant, the job isn't so much historical as it is hospitality. You're there to make people feel at ease, have a good time, learn something, but it's the people skills that matter the most, versus a long historical soliloquy. Making it interesting and relative to what they already know in their own life, experience, pop culture. Linking this place to Bridgerton in the dining areas is quite common. Making it feel more real and alive. A big motivation for a lot of the collecting was showing what different cultures did. Everything from everywhere is everywhere. Nothing should work, but it does, because when you learn a little bit more and think about it, everything has some sort of meaning for why it's here or why it's next to something else. And then the entire building just becomes alive with an odd poetry. It's very easy to think, I know absolutely nothing, surrounded by people who have been here for decades and written entire books on the museum and its history, but then giving a little bit of it to someone and then being so appreciative makes it go from humbling to awe.